Hello there folks, back for another video. You'll have to bear with me in this one because I have just more or less recovered from having COVID. So if things start to go weird or I start to cough and all that kind of thing, that's why. But I couldn't miss out on doing another weekend video for you folks. And so I thought I'd put together one that has been at the forefront of my mind. And as you can probably tell by what's on the screen right now, it's all about Middle-earth and the Lord of the Rings. I effectively wanted to go through why I think the Lord of the Rings, or the Middle-earth strategy battle game from Games Workshop, is possibly the best game that GW has ever created. Now I know that's a big statement, and I've talked quite a lot about the likes of Mordheim and stuff in the past and that kind of thing too, and Blood Bowl and all those kind of games. All fantastic, but there is just something about the rules and the way that the Lord of the Rings plays and Middle-earth in general that makes it one of the best games I think I've ever played, and has genuinely been a massive part of my collection since it came out, basically. So for those who do not remember, the initial release of the Lord of the Rings came through this box set. So I got one of these, although unfortunately I didn't get the free Bilbo. So I got one of these back when the Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Ring came out. I don't think I got it initially when the game launched itself, but I did get it that Christmas, I think, after the first movie had come out and that kind of thing as well, which was really awesome. And it was a very interesting introduction to the world of Lord of the Rings. I had been to my local Games Workshop, the one in Dudley, and I had played a game where my brother took control of the goblins, who you can see on the right hand side of that top image there, and I took control of the high elves and the men of Gondor, and we had a little skirmish, and it was really good fun, and I really enjoyed the rules. I thought it was a really fantastic little set of mechanics for us to dive into. Admittedly, I was quite young as well back then, so you know, this was just like, oh my god, I get to play Lord of the Rings, this is amazing. We also then played a game with a little bit more oomph to it, so we played the Weathertop scenario from the original rules, where I was controlling Aragorn and the hobbits alongside my brother, and the guy who was running the demo controlled all the ring race and stuff and was tracking all the will and all that kind of thing as well. And it was one of those things where I was sitting down and like, oh my god, this is just like being in the movie. I really like seeing how this plays out. I'd loved the books and the audio books and the radio plays and stuff before then anyway. So effectively it was a massive easy in for me to dive in and give this game a go. So when it came to picking this set up, I obviously painted things up and had a really good time with it. I think my brother painted the goblins and did quite a nice job on them. I painted up the elves not at all like they are in the movie. They all had red cloaks and gold armour and green sort of tunics and stuff. And I think I painted my Gondorians more or less like they are in the movie, but then I had some of them who were painted in like orange and gold and all sorts of things like that. So I was, I wasn't exactly on brand when it came to the models and stuff that you were meant to be painting and stuff like that. But it was really good fun. Really enjoyed it. Had that first book that you can see up there. Was a really nice tome. One of the really nice things about it was that it came with some shots and things that weren't necessarily in the movies either. So you got the look of and you can actually see it on the front cover of the thing. That shot of the goblins running along the mountainside isn't actually in the movie, but there's like a shot of that where I think it's where the goblins are chasing the Fellowship down the mountain as they left Moria and Khazad-dûm and stuff like that. And there's also like a really nice shot of some elves killing some orcs or goblins, maybe it's Uruk-hai, in like a wood and that kind of thing as well. So it really sparked the imagination and got us thinking about it. The next step for a lot of people then was to move on to this game. So the Two Towers came out at the time of the Two Towers, and the thing that was different with this one was that it provided you with a bunch of mounted stuff. So this was when I split the cost of this with my friend. He took the Urukai, and I took the Rohirrim, and then discovered that I really don't like painting horses. But, you know, I had fun with them anyway, and I had quite a lot of them. I don't think we really got much further in the game as like a battle game at that point. I think most of our time was spent just playing the scenarios and stuff. But I remember it being really good fun, and it was good to see another box set that came out with lots of really fun miniatures and stuff in it. A lot of the time that was spent with Lord of the Rings was actually spent playing the scenarios out from the game. We basically played Lord of the Rings in the scenario mode kind of thing, where you're sort of doing it in a narrative sense, where we dived in and we played as the Fellowship, and we would fight against each other. We played like Balin's Tomb out, which was really fun. We played Weathertop. We played all those kind of different battles and things out on the tabletop. And we didn't really go too far into it, but I really loved it, and I had quite a nice collection of models and that kind of thing. And I think I even rescued a bunch of models from my friend, and have repainted them over the years, bringing them back to life, so they could be used on the tabletop again many years down the line. That's why Paint Stripper is good, everybody, because you can revamp miniatures, and that's where I kind of fell out of the game itself, really. I don't think we really play much more of it, because I think we got dragged back into 40k and Warhammer Fantasy Battles and that kind of thing, and I think it's because the films had sort of gone on for so long that I think they were falling out of the zeitgeist, so not a lot of people were playing the game and that kind of stuff as well, but we were enjoying it and having fun with it occasionally here and there. This was the third of the box sets, as you might have imagined, for the trilogy, which was Return of the King. I didn't actually get my hands on this one, but this one provided folks with the updated rulebook, as well as War of the Ring, so that was the sort of larger mass battle style game that they created alongside it. And you also got those really awesome new plastic Gondorians alongside orcs and stuff as well, which is really cool. The plastic kits that they do at the moment, some of them leave a little bit to be desired, but I think for the most part they've done a really good job with them. A lot of the time the detail kind of merges into each other, so you'll have really weird molded sections of the model where the cast hasn't really worked properly and all that kind of thing. But in general, I think that a lot of the stuff for Lord of the Rings, especially in plastic and obviously in metal, is genuinely fantastic. And it's a really good, and you often get quite a lot of miniatures for very little price as well, which is something that you can't necessarily say about about Games Workshop products. But that was the third box set that came out for them. Moving on from that, a couple of years later on down the line, I'd completely phased out of the Lord of the Rings by this point. I still had a bunch of stuff lying around for it and that kind of thing, but I'd never really dived in to play it much. But they re-released a new starter set, effectively, which did what I think a lot of people hoped they would have done at the beginning, which was to give you the Fellowship and to give you something to start playing out your narrative adventures. So the Mines of Moria was a great set that allowed you to play as the Fellowship of the Rings in plastic there, against a new plastic troll, a whole bunch of the old school goblins. You got all the scenery for playing Balin's Tomb out, and it was essentially just a way for you to play that scenario and then take things to the next level. Because as I say, I think a lot of people were really interested with the idea of playing the narrative side of things with Lord of the Rings, rather than it being just a wholly competitive game. So it was really nice to see them do that and bring that back to the fore. Where I did come back into the game, though, was with the release of Escape from Goblin Town. Now, they say limited edition on the box of these, but I don't think I've ever seen a version of this box set that wasn't limited edition, which goes to show that they probably didn't sell as many as they thought they were going to. But I picked this up, and it was a really fun reintroduction to Middle-earth for me. The set came with Thorin's company, so you got Bilbo, Thorin, Balin, Dwalin, and all that lot alongside Gandalf. There's also Radagast the Brown in there as well, and then you've got the Goblin King and a bunch of the goblins of Goblin Town as well. So those sort of strange mutant-y goblins that you saw in the movie, and it was really fun just diving in and playing the game based on that starter set. I painted all the scenery bits for it, so I painted all the ramps and all that kind of thing, and it was really good fun just sitting down occasionally at my local store with my friend and just playing through the game, knocking goblins off things and running around and smashing stuff with heroic actions and all that kind of stuff. And it reinvigorated the idea that that Lord of the Rings, the Middle Earth strategy battle game, was something that was worth taking note of. It was a shame that the Hobbit movies didn't necessarily do as well as they did, but I think it was really good to have this reintroduction to the mechanics in such a heroic fashion, where you got all these different characters with lots of different weapon types and weapon styles and all that kind of thing, which I'll go into a little bit later when we talk about rules and things. But it was just really fun to play the game and have a bit of a blast with it. Haha, Sorcerer's Blast. That's a Middle Earth joke. And revisit the game once again, which was really cool, and it sort of sparked something more in me, which was really nice. Then things kind of came to a head in the last couple of years with the sort of reimplementation and the revamp of the game itself. So everything got changed from being Lord of the Rings or Hobbit dependent, effectively, to being the Middle Earth strategy battle game, and that then included rules for playing both the period of the Hobbit and also the period of the War of the Ring with the Lord of the Rings as well. And this was the brand new set that came out. So this set came with a new AOMer, you can see at the bottom there, which is really cool. You had the Witch King on Nazgul. You had a whole bunch of orcs, a war troll, a bunch of the mounted Rohirrim, on foot Rohirrim, and then some of the Army of the Dead as well, which was really cool. And this effectively reset the board for a lot of people, and was kind of a really nice place for people to dive in and start having fun with the Lord of the Rings again, because people knew that the game was going to be supported, which was crazy, because up until then it really hadn't been. That's one of the things I should probably touch on now, is that from the period of like this through to this, Games Workshop didn't really support the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. It still existed, but no new models came out for it, really. There were occasionally some sort of resin stuff that came out, or maybe they'd do some bits in Finecast and that kind of thing. But the range was never supported, the game was never updated. It even took a really long time for the third book in the Hobbit series to come out. So they did The Unexpected Journey, they did The Desolation of Smaug, but then they didn't really get round to even doing the Battle of the Five Armies, which I thought was just absurd. But I think it was because I think the IP was waning, and I don't think people were really getting involved with it. But that's where people like the Great British Hobbit League came in. So this was a fantastic community of people that have kept the game going in the background for years, really. They have always been there in the background, adding new ideas and tournaments and community-based projects and everything into the mix. And it's genuinely one of the most welcoming communities as well, because you come in there and everybody is just in love with Middle Earth. And so having something like this to come and find was a great way for everyone to basically keep the game going. And the Great British Hobbit League ran massive events like Ardacon, which was really cool for reinvigorating the game. I'm fairly sure got the notice of Games Workshop and got them thinking about redoing things for Middle Earth and that kind of stuff on the tabletop. You had people like Tom and Damien, alongside a bunch of other really great creators from as far back as 2014, as you can see here, who were creating things like the SBG magazine, so the Strategy Battle magazine. This was free in PDF. You could also buy printed copies if you wanted to as well. I have pretty much all of their magazines, I think, down on a shelf behind me. But these were great. I mean, this showed off the passion that they had for supporting the Middle Earth strategy battle game and keeping the fire burning for a game that I think was grossly underrepresented by Games Workshop. And one of the nice things about what they did as well is that as they've grown, they've created more and more amazing terrain and interesting battle reports and all sorts of different things like that. This is the kind of stuff that keeps me coming back to the Lord of the Rings and enjoying it as a tabletop game prospect. But yeah, it's genuinely well worth having a look at, especially if you're someone who is maybe on the fence about this and it's like, oh, there's nobody around me who plays. I can guarantee you there probably is. The Great British Hobby League has so many people around the world helping out, as well as those that are there from Britain, and I think you'd be able to find someone to have a game with pretty easily, which I think is really nice to see. But yeah, so it's definitely worth having a look at that. Talking about the game as a whole, I should probably mention sort of where you get started with it. The Middle-earth strategy battle game, cool. There's a nice section listed out over on the Games Workshop website. You can still buy a fair amount of Lord of the Rings miniatures, although I will say that eBay is probably your best place to go, because you can still get your hands on a lot of the Middle-earth strategy battle game range that isn't plastic and isn't Finecast, by going over to eBay and checking out everything, because you could probably find everything you want on eBay for really, really cheap. And that's how I've managed to bulk out my collection, has been through just using eBay effectively to find all the miniatures I need. There's lots of stuff there breaking down into each of the different factions. There's also all the Hobbit stuff as well, which admittedly is a little bit more lackluster, but there is a bunch of the Hobbit stuff there too. Getting started though, you could go with the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Probably a good idea actually, because you get the rules manual in there, which is a neat option. But you're also then going to need, depending on the period of time that you're playing in, you're either going to need to get the armies of the Hobbit or the armies of the Lord of the Rings. Both of these army books give you access to all of the rules for all the good and evil factions and characters from both of these periods. So if you want to primarily play Lord of the Rings, you get that one. If you want to play the Hobbit, buy the other one. I think a lot of people probably pick up the Lord of the Rings one over the Hobbit one at the moment, but that's just me. You can also get it, well, I thought you could get it digitally, but I don't think you can anymore, unless this links to somewhere else. Let's just see what happens when I click on this. You can get it from Warhammer Digital, which is where I got my copy from, which we're going to look at now. So this is a digital copy of the rules manual, so you can have a look through. So as you can see, it breaks things down really nice and easily. The gameplay in Middle-earth SBG is very much more focused on skirmishy style engagements. Obviously you can play with large amounts of miniatures and that kind of thing, because the game is designed for that to happen, but I think the game shines when you play with maybe a handful, well, I say a handful, when you play with like 20 miniatures per side, something like that, when you're playing little skirmishing engagements between different forces. The game uses a very simple system of dealing with shooting and combat. When it comes to shooting, your models will often have a shoot value, which you can see is designated on the side of the thing there. Maybe you can see it on this book, but it's probably a good idea that you can't read this. There'll be a shoot value that you'll roll, you'll see if you hit, and then you'll compare things on a strength versus toughness table to see if you wound the individual, which I think is really neat. Which is really cool. Moving is a lot more dynamic in this game. Again, it's been designed a little bit more so that it feels like a sort of skirmishy roleplay experience, rather than it just being a bit more something like Necromunda or Mordheim than it is like a 40k or a Warhammer Fantasy Battles and that kind of stuff, which is nice as well. And then combat is really cool as well. So combat is done through the basically both sides roll a number of d6 based on the number of attacks they have on their profile. The highest number wins. If there is a if the two highest dice draw, then you look at the fight value of each model. So in this case here we've got Frodo versus a Moria Goblin. So Frodo has the fight value of 3, the Goblin has 2. So the Goblin loses the combat, is pushed back, and then you roll to do the damage and that kind of thing as well, which is really cool. And this is where the game also has that dynamic feeling to it, because you are pushing models away from each other and there's an ebb and flow to fighting. So it always feels like it's a little bit more cinematic than games like Necromunda or Mordheim or Warhammer 40,000. everything feels like heroes have presence on the tabletop, and hordes of models also have a sense of weight to them when they're surging around foes. But then you surround someone like Aragorn with like 6 goblins, and then he swings his sword around, and because he gets the higher number, or because he equals it but he's got the higher fight value, you suddenly knock all the goblins away and take 2 of them out with your swing, and then rush off towards, to go and help Frodo or Sam or something, which I think is really cool. It's a really dynamic game that is really fun to see played out on the tabletop, especially in that kind of like skirmishy fashion, because you start to see again that ebb and flow of gameplay, and everything all just feels like everything matters more, which I think is really nice in a game. And things also have table presence for a much longer period as well. Things aren't getting wiped off entirely in huge squads and all that kind of stuff. Everything feels a lot more cinematic, a lot more skirmishy, which is where I tend to find my passion with games. There's also loads of additional rules in there for cavalry and everything as well. Everything's broken down really nicely in the rulebook to make it very easy to learn. You can tend to get away with pretty much everything up to here without having to go too much further, and you only really need to look at things like sections for monsters and stuff if you start to include monsters into your games. Other things that make the game really fun are obviously these heroic actions and that kind of stuff. So characters can use points of might and will and that kind of thing to do actions that are above and beyond because they're heroes. So you might have Aragorn, doing like a heroic move where he calls out actions to people and they charge forth to go and hit the enemy before they can hit them, or you could do like a heroic fight and that kind of thing where you fight twice and all that kind of stuff, which is really cool. You also have weapon qualities. So one of the nice things about the different weapons in the game is that, and this is where it gets a little bit more granular, which is really cool. So say you have swords or hand weapons and that kind of thing. Each of those has special abilities aligned with it. So if you have like a 2-handed weapon, then you have -2 to the dual rolls, but you have +1 to your wound rolls and that kind of thing as well. And then you have special strikes as well. So special strikes allow you to do things like piercing strikes and bashes with hammers and mauls and feints and stuns and that kind of thing as well, which again feeds more into the idea of this being like a role-play skirmishy style game rather than it being your standard run-of-the-mill chucking models at each other kind of affair. The other thing that's really nice about this is all this becomes second nature, and so when you're sitting down to play the game, you're not flicking back and forward through a book looking for stratagems and all that kind of thing. It all sort of like sits in your mind as fun mechanics that you kind of get your head around early on, and so when you're playing the game it just becomes a lot easier, which is really nice. You obviously got magical powers and that kind of thing. But the other thing I wanted to bring up was so these advanced rules you don't really look at when you're diving into the game, so that's all good. But here we go. So you do have match play and that kind of thing where you play to points limits, which is fair enough. But where I think things lie is in the scenarios and stuff. So you don't really have the scenarios here, but one of the books that came out recently that was really good for this was, and let's go back to my browser, this book here. So the Quest of the Ringbearer. So the Quest of the Ringbearer took a bunch of the scenarios from the previous release of the game, previous releases, I suppose, of the game, and put them together in effectively a full-on storyline that charts the journey of the Ringbearer from Hobbiton all the way through to the crack of Mount Doom. And this is, if I was diving into Lord of the Rings again properly, or if I was suggesting that everybody dive into play the Lord of the Rings, this is where I think I would go, right? I love the idea of people creating their own war bands and that kind of thing as well, and we'll talk about something that's good for that in a second. But I think genuinely one of the coolest things about this game is that you can sit down and you can play out all those scenes from not only the movies but the books, because they've included a bunch of book-based scenarios in here as well, and just follow it through to the end. You can play the Buckleberry Ferry. You can play trying to thieve Farmer Maggot's crop from his field. You can play out Weathertop. You can play the escape through Osgiliath as the Nazgul is chasing you and all that kind of thing. It's a really fun book filled with really cool scenarios, and it does that thing that I think a lot of hobbyists want, in that it encourages you to paint things up in small batches to play specific scenarios. So you see that you're going to be playing the Buckleberry Ferry next week. Cool, boom, right. We need a bunch of trees, we need a river, we need someone to scratch build a ferry. It's okay, we've got all the Fellowship painted up, we've got the ring wraiths as well, that's all cool. What else do we need? We need to build this and this and this. So when it comes to Weathertop, boom, 2 weeks time we're going to build a Weathertop, I'm going to play this scenario out. And then you build up a nice collection of terrain and all that kind of thing that you can then use in later play sessions with your friends in order to play the different other versions of the game as well. So I was just thinking that, you know, if you're going to be playing the Lord of the Rings or the Middle-earth strategy battle game, I would highly recommend picking this up. The books are a bit pricey, obviously, but you can get them for a lot cheaper from independent stockists out there, which is really cool. I will also say another really good way to play the game is with battle companies. Where is battle companies? I can't see battle companies. Have I missed it? Is it here somewhere? I'm on the start here, that's why. So if I go to ways to play and we go to battle companies. So battle companies is a really cool book. So battle companies is effectively a way for you to play small narrative games with a warband of characters from a particular faction. So the Battle Companies book is split down into a whole bunch of factions and even sub-factions within them as well. And you collect maybe 10 to 15 models per side, and as you play you upgrade your characters like a traditional skirmish game like Necromunda or Mordheim, and you develop their skills and all that kind of thing, and you tell stories based on a bunch of very narratively driven scenarios on the tabletop. So it's another really good way to play the game, keeping the model count very low, allowing you to be very allowing you to customize your force in different ways and that kind of thing, and just genuinely enjoy the process of telling stories within Middle-earth, rather than feeling like you need to build a massive, huge army and that kind of thing, which is really cool. So like this gives you a good idea of exactly the kind of stuff that you'd need to play the game. Like, as soon as you've got the rule book and you've got the Battle Companies book, buy one of these boxes, or you know, literally buy any. That's going to be weird, isn't it? It's going to be weird on me. It's going to be weird. There we go. Buy one of these boxes, or just buy one of the Warriors sets, and effectively you are sorted for the foreseeable future. Like, I had a really good time building a Rohan warbands. I've also done a little cool dwarf one as well, where I took up a bunch of dwarf rangers and some dwarf warriors, used Murin and Dra, who are two of my favourite models from this range, and added them into the mix as well. And just had a lot of fun just playing out little cool Battle Companies games where you're only using about 10 models per side, and you're fighting out over really cool things like resources and objectives and that kind of thing, rather than just killing each other and, you know, wiping someone off the table, which I think is really fun. Genuinely, if I was going to like, if you're interested in the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit and you want to play out fascinating and interesting stories, I would either recommend taking the Quest of the Ringbearer or going that extra step and picking up Battle Companies and playing that as well. Because the other thing is, between the two of those, you're going to be creating a really nice collection of terrain and models and that kind of stuff that can be used for both. You know, if someone's going to be collecting Uruk-hai, cool, well, those Uruk-hai can be used in the ambush of Amon Hen and all that kind of stuff. And everything feeds into each other, which is really nice. And the range still looks great, even, you know, many years on, mainly thanks to the Perry twins and their amazing sculpting. Website's not behaving very well, is it? There you go. So yeah, some really awesome options there for people who want to play Middle-earth strategy battle game. I will also point out that while there is a bunch of plastic stuff and then some fine cast and that kind of thing, there are a couple of models that are still available in metal, which is really cool. But Forge World also do a really nice section of Middle-earth bits and pieces. So recently they released the Bjornings and stuff like that, and they are sort of working in the background as part of a specialist studio to create more and more content for Middle-earth, which is really cool. We've got a bunch of new plastic kits over the last couple of years for the 3 hunters and that kind of thing, but if you're looking to step things up a level, you can pick up some of the really cool Forge World resin, which is way better than a traditional Finecast, I will say. So there you go. That's just a look at some of the really awesome kits that they're doing. If you wanted to play as a more badass Beorn, because the original Beorn model is awful, then go and pick up Ringbearer, his badass son, who is even more awesome. But yeah, some really cool stuff there. I'm just going to point out that, like, if you want to dive in and play as Rohan, you've got this. So you've got this pairing as well, including Aldor there, who fires his bow too early at the Battle of Helm's Deep and that kind of thing as well. So they've done a really nice job on this range and sort of building some things up in the background. So I think I've put across why I think that the Middle-earth strategy battle game is one of the coolest games out there, right? So if you're looking for additional content to keep you going with this game, obviously go and join the Great British Hobby League. Always good stuff there as well. Get your hands on the SBG magazine, which is a really good resource for those people looking to dive into the game and learn a little bit more about painting and modelling and that kind of stuff as well. But then also there's a couple of YouTube channels that I reckon you should go and check out. So Battle Streams of Middle-earth is really good, mostly run by Damien, who does some really fun vlogs, and he also does these Battle Streams of Middle-earth live streams where they go through the old comic books, if you remember that, not comic books, the old magazines for the Middle-earth strategy battle game, and paint up models and help you get through your backlog and all that kind of stuff as well. There's also STF Wargaming Studio, who do really fun grand campaign videos looking at the Lord of the Rings and how it plays out, basically going through the entire of the story of Middle-earth, which I think is really cool, starting from the very beginning all the way to the end, which is really nice. So if you're interested in learning how to play the game, you've got STF there as well, and Battle Streams of Middle-earth. But beyond that, I think it's just a case of diving in and having fun with it. Like Warhammer 40,000, Age of Sigmar, Horus Heresy, it's all obviously very big and, you know, everybody plays it and has fun with it. But I think don't underestimate the Middle-earth strategy battle game and what it brings to the table. As I say, it manages to cater towards it being a very small, narratively focused game, through to it being a skirmish warband style game of maybe 15 to 20, 30 models per side, all the way through to being able to play out massive, huge battles between the likes of, you know, the Rohirrim and the Gondorians at the Pelennor against the Mumarks and all that kind of stuff as well. And they've done a really good job with the rule system. And it's one that I think a lot of people would really enjoy because of the fluidity to it, the ease of understanding, the special rules not being too much of a bogged down slog like stratagems and that kind of stuff as well that you see in 40k. But yeah, I've probably talked for way too long. I've talked for over half an hour apparently, according to my recording. But are you a Middle-earth fan? Do you have some cool resources out there for people to go and check out more on this game? Where did you start with it? Have you stuck with it? Have you left it, come back, all that kind of thing? Do you agree with me that it's probably the best rule set that Games Workshop ever created? They used it in another game, so you know, you know, it can't be that bad. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to go and dig out some cool metal models. I'm going to go and dig out my Bilbo and my Isildur and get them painted, I think. I'm going to have some fun paintings of Middle-earth miniatures. God, they're good. They're good looking stuff. And hopefully I'll be back in another video very soon where we talk about more stuff from the world of tabletop gaming and miniatures and all that jazz. I hope you've had a nice time listening along to this. Maybe you've got some painting done and my voice hasn't been too croaky. I'll be back very soon with another video. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. If you could, that would be fantastic. And remember, if you enjoy what I do and you want to help me out in any way, then there is a Ko-fi link for you to go and donate to if you would like to do so. But you're in no way obliged to. It's just great to have people here talking about the hobby and enjoying it and having fun. Maybe in my next video I'll dive in and I'll have a chat about sort of miniatures from this range and where you can take things. Yeah, I'd love to show off some of the miniatures I've painted, so you can get a look at kind of how things have progressed, and yeah, maybe inspire some of you to do some painting of yourself as well. So yeah, I'm going to move on. I've talked for too long. I feel like butter spread over too much bread. Oh, the quotes. That's another good thing about the game. You can quote things endlessly from the movies. I'm going to head on to do another video. I shall see you, everybody, very, very soon. Bye for now.